Love covers over a multitude of sins. That's a great thing to know. And it's a thing that can be, well, leveraged in some wrong ways. I know I counsel people like this pretty routinely, where one of the spouses has done something at the very least inappropriate and very possibly in a betrayal kind of way, who says, "But I love you, doesn't that make the difference?" The answer to that really and truly is, no. You just telling me that you love me does not cover over a multitude of sins. Right? What covers over a multitude of sins? First of all, there's God's love. And his love had to cover a multitude of sins. Here's what he covered it with. He covered it with the blood of Jesus. And that act was love. Jesus was the embodiment of love. God, according to the Apostle John, is love. Now, there are times in our human relationships where it is love that covers a multitude of sins. Because of our regard for the other person, we are able to cover those sins. And the best way to cover a sin is to forgive the one who did the sin. This is a subject that, well, there are whole books that are devoted to it. And if you're struggling in your life to forgive, last time I gave you the challenge of creating a little bit of a list of people you need to forgive and people that you need to ask forgiveness from. And that may have not been that big of a deal for you. It may have just been, okay, make the list. The likelihood of that is pretty slim. I think most of us kind of struggle in this forgiveness deal. Well, when you struggle, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't necessarily mean you're immature. See, immature people don't struggle with forgiveness. They just don't bother with it. Mature people may struggle with forgiveness, but through the grace of Christ, as he empowers us, we can move through a process of forgiving the one who hurt us. And it takes tremendous humility to go to the one who we hurt, and ask them for our forgiveness. There's a great book that I think most people will find very helpful on this if you're a book person. And it's really kind of a workbook. It's called Choosing to Forgive. It's been out a long time. I've used it for years as the basis for a class I've taught, and it's been useful every time I taught it. I've had people who it gave them tools that they needed to begin, some of them to begin, and many of them to stay with this process. When you know the process of forgiving is done? Well, that's a tough question. And part of the reason that it's tough is because everybody's not the same. Not exactly the same, anyway. Now, we are very, very similar in that most of us are going to have to work through a process. And the deeper the wound is, the longer the process generally takes. Some people, by nature and temperament, find it less difficult to forgive than others. Well, even putting that in as a factor in the equation, it still is a process. How do you know when you're done with a process? I don't know that there's a set and concrete answer, but here's what I have discovered in my own life. When the memory of that offense no longer re-injures me, I think I'm either getting to the end of the process or am at the end of the process. And for me, certain things, small wounds, small injuries, small offenses, it doesn't take long, right? But the deep wounds, when I reflect on, when I remember those deep wounds and they re-injure me, I know this doesn't mean I haven't forgiven that person. What it means is I'm not done with the process. There's a pretty big difference between those two ideas. See, the first idea, well, I just haven't forgiven him. Well, that kind of sets you up as the bad person, doesn't it? That if you were more mature, if you were more godly, if you're walking tighter with Christ, you would have forgiven them. I think that won't help you. It'll hurt you. What will help you is to realize I'm on this journey with Christ. Christ is not waiting for me. God's not waiting for me to get through that journey to be happy and pleased with me. God, through Christ and Holy Spirit, are walking with me through this journey. We are side by side. And honestly, there are times where He is carrying me. So forgive. To me, I think that's the finest way for love to cover a multitude of sins. All right, let's look at what he says next. In verse 9 of 1 Peter chapter 4, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Now that's interesting. I have a daughter and a son-in-law who leak hospitality. They're both extroverts. They love people and they love connecting with people. My son-in-law loves cooking things on his smoker cooker and presenting them as the main course. And my daughter loves to prepare all kinds of meals. She's a fabulous cake maker and baker and cook in general. But when they they fit this offer hospitality to one another mold so well. Here's what happens with them. They have a long, difficult day at work, and coming home and getting ready to host somebody for dinner puts energy back into them. For me, I've had a long day at work. The last thing I want to do is have somebody that I gotta take care of after I get home from work. See, I think Peter was writing to guys like me, men and women who, see, I don't hate hospitality. I don't hate people. I love people. But man, it takes a lot of work sometimes for me to be happy and excited about asking somebody, showing hospitality. Hospitality is a dying art in our culture, and part of the reason is we have packed our lives so full of so many obligations that we don't have room or time and other even financial resources to be hospitable. It's far out of our pattern. And one of the reasons that it's so far out of our pattern is because our pattern doesn't give margin for it. Peter doesn't say just offer hospitality. That's a good thing to do. And it's something a Christian ought to be happy to do. It goes on. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Crud. We got group again tonight. We're supposed to have everybody over here. Good grief. That's grumbling, right? And I don't even have to say it out loud. I mean, the older I get, the less extroverted I seem to be. When I was in high school, I was fairly extroverted. Through college, extroverted. In youth ministry, I was pretty extroverted. Then I got into my 40s and 50s and now my 60s. Part of it is I just don't have as much energy as I used to, so I'm a lot more selective about what I'm enthusiastic about because of that. But some of it is I feel a need to drop back for solo time, quiet time, alone time, to read and write and think and just be quiet and watch TV and, just, for me, there are times when I would rather go play a solo round of golf than get connected with a couple of guys I don't know, or even sometimes, not very often, but sometimes even play a round of golf with people I do know and enjoy. What's that about? Well, it's about my growing introversion. And I have to be intentional about not letting that overtake my life, because part of my mission in life, part of the way I execute on my mission in life, which I'll tell you in a minute what my mission is, but part of the way I execute on my mission is by showing hospitality to one another. Offer hospitality to one another. There's quite a difference between me just showing you hospitality and offering you hospitality, right? Offering you hospitality involves me inviting you to join me in a moment for hospitality. Right, here's my mission. My mission in life is to steward opportunity. It would take me another 30 minutes to flesh that out, but basically in the context of what Peter's writing here, what it means for me is connecting with people is an opportunity, and I need to steward that opportunity. I need to Paul writes this in, I think it's in Galatians, when he writes, make the most of every opportunity. Sometimes making the most of an opportunity is me saying no, or not yet, or not now. Sometimes it's me saying yes and having to say no to something else so that I can say yes. This is going to be the case with most people for hospitality. You're going to have to say no to some things so you can say yes to other things. Well, that's just me. To offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. I prefer hanging out with people who don't grumble very much. I get it. And I am the kind of guy that if you need to grumble, I'm a pretty good catcher for that kind of stuff. And I'm okay. When I need my tank filled, it usually works best when I do that, not with a grumbler. Okay, all of this goes back to what Peter wrote, above all, love each other deeply. See, the motivation for me offering hospitality is love. People that I love, I don't usually have any big problem offering hospitality to. Okay, he goes on. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. I'm going to look at the very first part of this today. We're going to unpack it next time. Each of you should use whatever gifts you have received to serve others. I believe every Christian has been given a gift or more than one gift. And these are, in this context, it's easy to see this as I think it's easy to see this probably spiritual gifts that Peter's talking about. Some people make a huge distinction between natural gifts and spiritual gifts. I believe there are spiritual gifts and there are natural gifts, and I'm not sure I make that big of a distinction between the two. I'm thinking that's a secondary issue to this whole thing. But here's the deal. God has commissioned us to use our gifts to serve other people, to serve one another, to serve others. So here's my challenge. First challenge. Look at your calendar. Where can you offer hospitality? Break into it, make a commitment, offer hospitality, even if you're an introvert. Second challenge is between now and the next time we get together like this, I want you to think about, how has God gifted you? How has God gifted you? Think about it however you want to. I want you to think about it and pray about it. And we'll come back to this next time, when I hope I get to connect with you again on Facebook. I always get ready to say Facebook because I'm old and tired. So care with Stevie boy.